Hey guys, welcome to Sonic Discovery. I am your host, David Correa. Hope you guys are having a great day. We're about to talk about 3 great albums. First from Janelle Monáe, then from Grouper, and last, the return of Sleep. Well guys, thanks so much for clicking play on this episode. If you're not familiar with Sonic Discovery, I basically just take different albums, review them, let you know what I think, so then it gives you a better idea of should I check this out or not. Starting off this episode, we'll be talking about the newest release from Janelle Monáe. This is called Dirty Computer. Now this is a concept album from Janelle, which she's not foreign to. She's already done the concept album on 2010's Arch Android and 2013's Electric Lady. On this one, she's covering a very similar sound musically. I think maybe she's taking some of her eccentric moments and maybe taming them down just a tad. So hopefully she'll be able to get, a hit out of this that'll be played on the radio. Lyrically, she's saying that we are the dirty computers. Just like a computer, sometimes people think that they need to be fixed because they have bugs or viruses. But she's saying that as humans, these imperfections that we have don't need to be fixed. These are the things that set us apart and make us unique. And she champions this all throughout this album. In addition to the album, she also released it as a visual form. I just checked it out last night, and it's definitely worth a watch if you'd like to know the whole concept of visually what she's trying to tell on this album. You can find that on YouTube. But when it comes to the actual album, we're going to get things started at the top with the title track, Dirty Computer. This features some background vocals from Brian Wilson, famously of the Beach Boys. So they definitely have a Beach Boy quality to them. And on this track, she's kind of just setting up the story that I kind of have already explained. Then that leads us to the next track, Crazy Classic Life, which has a bright synth sound and a bouncing bass. And here she's talking about the freedom felt from being young and alive. She states, if things ended tonight, you'd be happy with what you lived. But then in the outro, she goes on to reference that such a reality isn't really available to everyone around. Take a Bite was one that I wasn't especially fond of, but at least it did have an upbeat, funky sound, and here it has more sexual tendencies in the lyrics, as she's encouraging others to take a bite out of her. But it's funny because they're computers, so instead of just taking a bite, it's a B-Y-T-E, like computer bite. After that, we get the light pop funkiness of Screwed, which has background vocals by Zoe Kravitz. This one was especially catchy. This is kind of like a sexual track. She's talking about getting screwed in a sexual way, but also alluding to the fact that we are literally screwed with how things are in the world right now. I like the switch that she has on the outro. Musically, it changes up into more of a bouncing beat with guitar. And here she's talking about how there's people that are trying to stop this progression forward. Django Jane is a single release from this album, and this one has a more hip-hop flavor to the production. Here she raps and explains the inequality that women have, despite the fact that they're the ones that bring life and actually hold a lot of power themselves. I was especially fond of the wordplay she has on this track. Up next, we have the track Pink, which features background vocals from Grimes, and it really had a similar sound to Grimes' own music. This is another ode to women, and really goes through different ways of talking about vaginas and, just pink in general, without really talking about them, but kind of alluding to them. This has much more of a power pop sound with a more prominent guitar on the hook and the outro. Make Me Feel is the leading single from the album, and this has a light funk sound to it that's very catchy. that is bleeding Prince influence all throughout the track, especially on the hook and the bridge. This one is also a lot more sexually leaning on the lyrics. I Got the Juice is one that features production and vocals from Pharrell, and here we have more of a tropical vibe going on. I didn't really care too much for this track because musically I thought it was okay, but lyrically I didn't really know how it connected to the other tracks. I Like That is one that I especially like the music on. It has more of a hip-hop leaning sound and is produced by Organized Noise. Here, she's proclaiming that she's proud to be an original and states, "I'm the random minor note you hear in major songs." Don't Judge Me has a smoother R&B sound as she's telling her lover to stop focusing on her flaws, but instead focus on the great things that she does. Do you like the real me or the one I pretend to be? And then the album ends on the peppy anthem American, which is talking about the hope that this land will one day be open to have equality for all. The beginning starts off talking more from an ignorant person that has ideas on what really makes America, and on the second half is talking through someone's perspective that is a lot more open to inclusion. Overall, I thought as a concept, it worked. I mean, the dirty computer is kind of referenced a little throughout, but I felt more that this album is about being original, being yourself, and how that's okay if you're different from others because that's what makes up this country, a bunch of different people. I'm going to give this album a score of an 8.5 out of 10, so I highly recommend you check this out. Next up for review, we have the surprise album from Grouper. This is called Grid of Points. Now, Grouper is a musical project of Liz Harris. She got attention for her 2008 album Dragging a Dead Deer Up a Hill, and her most recent album before this was 2014's Ruins. Grouper has what you would call a very soft, ethereal sound. People kind of categorize this as ambient music, and that's definitely what we get on this surprise release, which is really short. It's only 6 tracks and 22 minutes long. The album opens up with Races, which is just under a minute, I believe. Here we just have these beautiful harmonies that are just loaded with reverb. And listening to this opening track, you get a really good idea of what's next to come, because that's basically it. Beautiful, ethereal sounding vocals over some piano and a ton of reverb. Tracks like Parking Lot and Driving have a very simple piano structure that has the vocal just kind of follow along. And when it comes to the vocals, again, they're very soft and they mostly have a harmony that kind of goes along with it. Thanksgiving Song has a similar piano structure, but here vocally, it sounds like there's a lot more layering going on, which gives off a more ethereal feel. Birthday Song provides us some minor chords that gives the song a much darker tone. Blouse has a more skeletal structure to the song with the piano, and when you add in the vocal, both of them together create the saddest moment on this album. And then we close off with Breathing, which has more audible vocals. You still really can't tell what she's saying, but they're a lot more prominent. They still create the same kind of haunting feel as before. Towards the end, it suddenly stops and we hear a helicopter come in very, very loudly into the track that completely interrupts everything. And after that, we hear the sounds of trains passing by and just the song never returns. So I'm not quite sure as to what the meaning is behind this. What I took from it is that we're in this really beautiful, peaceful world that Grouper has created. And then in the end, you're kind of reminded of the world that we live in. So that's just kind of what I took from it. You listen to this 22 minutes, and if you want to just chill out, relax, maybe do some yoga or meditation, this would be a great album for that. This is going to get a score of a 7.5 out of 10 for me. So if what I just mentioned, yoga, meditation, if that sounds appealing to you, then definitely check this out. And last for review, we have the return of the stoner metal band Sleep. This is called The Sciences. I'm not too familiar with this band. I know that they have a lot of pop references in their lyrics, and they haven't been around for a while. Their last album was actually called Dope Smoker, and that was released back in '99. But after that, they got in an argument with their label because the album wasn't really marketable. It was one long song that spanned an hour. The label was upset with that. They tried to make some changes. The band got upset with that. So they basically disbanded after that. They started touring again back in 2009. And finally, they released their fourth album on 4/20, of course. The band consists of Al Cisneros on bass and vocals, Matt Pike on guitar, and they have a new drummer. They have Jason Roeder taking over drums that started back in 2010. If you've listened to stoner metal, the person that's their big influence, and you can hear all throughout this, is Black Sabbath. So if you're a fan of Sabbath, you're definitely going to like this. What you get here are just long tracks that are just heavy and sluggish, to where the riffs are a little slower, but there's just like this constant just groove going on over and over again. There are moments here where there is some variety added to the music, some solos that are provided, but mostly that's kind of what you get. The opening track, the title track, The Sciences, is instrumental and has a fuzzy guitar line that just keeps going up and down the neck with a bombing effect in the background. Then that moves us on to Marijuana's theme, which opens up with a bong rip. Of course it would. The vocals here are very minimal, as they are throughout the album. And lyrically here, they're just referencing different cosmic imagery along with pop references. And this is a very heavy track with a growl, sludgy sound. This does provide us with a great guitar solo with about 2 minutes to go. Sonic Titan is a 12-minute plus track that has a very similar heavy, sludgy sound. At the 5-minute mark, we are provided with a great bass solo, as then the vocals appear, and they're briefly talking about seeking Zion. There is a climb that happens in the track after this, but still kind of keeps it at the same sluggish sound. The band is really gelling at this point. Antarctic and Thond is a 14-minute track, and musically similar to the others. This one does provide us with more vocals, as they're talking about the importance of the sun to the survival of people living out in the snow, or something like that. A guitar solo comes in at the 10-minute mark and sticks around for about 2 minutes, as then we have the pace slightly increase to then just kind of come back down to a slower crawl. Geezer Butler opens up with a faint bass solo, which I thought maybe, could have been a little bit more prominent in the song. And that's obviously an ode to Geezer Butler, who is the bassist for Black Sabbath. This tells a story of a homeless man that is really just coping with his current situation by constantly being medicated. The riff and the overall sound is consistent with what we've heard throughout the rest of the album. And late in the song, we get another great bass solo that then leads to a climactic ending here with a lot of cymbal crashes. And then the album closes with the instrumental The Botanist, which was my personal favorite. This has a much looser sound, and that doesn't really follow a groove, where the bass and the guitar are playing in unison. This one has overall great guitar work. Opens up with a real heavy riff, followed by some acoustic guitars and some nice melodic guitar lines that really rounds out the sound of the track. And the last 2 minutes, we have more of a psychedelic feel as it comes to a fade. Overall, I was really happy with this release. Vocally, it's not the best, but that's kind of not why you listen to something like this. You're just listening to it for the very heavy riffs and overall loud, aggressive sound, which is exactly what you get on here. This is going to get a score of an 8.5 out of 10 from me. So if you like your metal sluggish and slow and heavy, then I recommend you give this a listen. Well, guys, thanks so much for checking out the show. If you have any feedback, comments, suggestions on what I should review, make sure to leave those at the bottom. And while you're down there, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you know what's on the next one. On that episode, I'll be talking about the newest release from Post Malone. So be on the lookout for that.